On this week's episode of DLN Xtend, we set aside some time and decided to talk about getting our video games on. This week's episode of DLN Xtend is brought to you by DigitalOcean and Bitwarden. Welcome to episode 30 of DLN Xtend. DLN Xtend is a community-powered podcast. We take conversations from the DLN community, from places like the DLN Discourse forums, Telegram groups, Discord servers, and more. We also talk about topics from the other shows around the network and give our takes.
Hey, Matt and Wendy. I'm not going to be able to make it for this episode of DLN Xtend. See, I'm currently at the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in northern Alaska on a mission to catch a Pikachu, and this is really important to me. So I've been a little delayed. I'll hope to catch you next week. All right, bye.
And with me is one of the amazing co-hosts that I am normally with. Our other one is out traveling and about in this crazy times in the world. With me is Wendy. How are you doing, Wendy?
I am doing pretty dang good.
So what have you been up to?
Well, this last week has been pretty dang crazy. It's time for getting ready for school, trying to finalize curriculum and stuff, finalize stuff for the 2 different co-op that we are a part of this year. And I talked to you a little bit last week about a used laptop option for somebody else that I know that's also in this homeschool community. Her son's been using a Chromebook, and she told him that when he started high school, she'd get him a better laptop. He's finally hit high school, and she was doing the searching for stuff, and it's, trying to keep things inside a specific budget. There's a lot of great laptops up there, but it doesn't take long before, holy crap, they're expensive. And I know I talked before about grabbing a Pinebook for my daughter for school, and you mentioned something about how awesome the Microsoft Surface Pro 2 is, especially when it comes to getting Linux installed on it, how light they are, all the things you can do with them. And man, I've really been starting to look at these two. They're right within the same price range. They don't have quite as much storage, but instead of dealing with an ARM processor, one of the ones I'm looking at, I think it has an i5 in it. Nothing spectacular, but maybe this is the way I go instead of the Pinebook.
Just a recommendation. What I will say is avoid any of the Windows ARM ones, specifically for Microsoft, like the Surface 3 and the 2. And if they say just Surface, ignore those.
It has to be one of the Pro lines.
It has to be either the Pro or a Go. Those are the ones that has to be, because the older ones are ARM processors that you can't, emphasize the word can't, install Linux on. So
that would be highly disappointing.
Yes. So severely be aware of that. If you're specifically looking at the second version, which is the Surface Pro 2s, find a distro with good scaling. That's all I'm going to say, because you're working on a full HD screen that's a 10.6-inch screen. So do keep that in mind.
We'd be most likely rolling with Manjaro because that's what's on every other system. And so just to keep consistency, like I said before, I might let my daughter play with it and see if there's something she liked a little bit better that way. I don't see us changing from Manjaro, but at least giving her some options when it comes to desktop environments. She'll most likely settle on Plasma.
Out of familiarity more than anything else.
Yeah, she's out of familiarity.
I did production work on the Surface Pro 2s for a good year and a half, and they're great little machines. I'm not going to lie. Like, say what you want about Microsoft as a company, their hardware is freaking fantastic. At least when it comes to the Surface line of stuff, it is good. Again, say what you want about the company as a whole. Microsoft is beating Apple at a lot of things, and design and new product categories is one of them. The Surface lines are very, very good. I would continuously recommend the Pro line over, say, like the Surface Book line, just because the Surface Book line uses like base stations and it gets a little convoluted on how it uses, and some things don't work. Sometimes the dedicated GPU and the base station doesn't work, so you're only using the tablet GPU and that kind of stuff. It gets really not pretty. If you're looking for like a decent $200 two-in-one, I would all day go with the Surface Pro 2, or if you need a little bit bigger screen, the specs are basically the same. You can go for the Surface Pro 3s, which work just as well in Linux, but the prices creep up a little more. They hit like that $250, $300 potentially more range. Your mileage will vary, and the Surface Pro 2s are a little bit thicker, a little bit heavier because they're an earlier gen, but they're really, really good machines. I really liked having one.
Well, and it's easy to find the Pro 2s in a bundle with the keyboard and the power cable, whereas I'm having a harder time finding the Pro 3s with everything all set and ready to go.
Yeah, and well, see, here's the nice thing. A lot of the Surface Pro 1 stuff works with the Surface Pro 2s. So like the keyboards and all that stuff is backwards compatible. Now, when you search for certain things, I would recommend searching specifically for Surface Pro 2, but what you'll end up finding is you'll end up finding a lot of the backwards compatible Surface Pro 1 stuff works with the Surface Pro 2s. And the nice thing is everything for Linux works on it. Both cameras work, front and back. Screen dimming, all that stuff works. Volume works. USB port works. The magnetic
touchscreen works.
The touchscreen works. Well, it's an N-Trig touchscreen basically, so it works. It's not as good as a Wacom like touchscreen type of deal, but it's good. There's the two different keyboards. You have like what they call the touch cover, which doesn't actually have like physical keys. It's more like typing on the desk kind of, I guess. I really don't know how else to really describe it. And then you have like type cover. Both work fantastically. The keyboard lighting on both work as well. So everything works, and this like the screen orientation works. Like when you flip it around and change it for the accelerometer, they're just really nice machines. And the cool thing is the one version I had the docking station, because I got that in a bundle, and the docking station, everything just worked. And this is running an OS it is not designed for.
Yeah.
And that to me was like amazing. And it required no special kernel tweaks or anything. The battery life they're older processors. They're like 4th or 5th gen i5s generically. So the battery life isn't amazing, but it's not terrible. 4 hours, 5 hours, maybe.
Enough for her to get through, basic classes and that kind of stuff. Otherwise, she'll be at home. So as long as it can get through class, then I think we're good. Nice
and light. You can throw them in a backpack. The only thing I will say is you might want to look at decals or skins for the back, because the back is like a gunmetal black, gray, titanium kind of color, and scratches do show up kind of easily. Just a recommendation there.
Well, we have a few Destination Linux stickers. Oh, and I noticed that the sheet just came out. My daughter would be all over having those stickers on the back of her whatever she's using. Plus, there's going to be Sonic stickers on there. You know it.
Yeah, I know it. And we'll get into the video game thing in a second with that. And speaking of stickers, if you guys want stickers, go to the DLN store and you guys can your stickers of your favorite shows, preferably this one.
There's two fantastic shows on the network. This one and Hardware Addict.
Oh,
maybe I'm a little.
You might be a little biased, but
yeah.
I know I'm biased on this show, so what can I say?
Matt, what have you been up to?
I did some collaborative work with Jason Evangelo from Linux for Everyone, also a great contributor to the Destination Linux network and his channel on Linux for Everyone. We talked about some video games. Problem I found with a lot of the video game recommendations when it comes to Linux, and if you look, I love ProtonDB.com. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. Some of the ratings are a bit questionable now. Before, it was pretty self-explanatory. Platinum is basically no configuration whatsoever.
Right, yeah.
Just works. Native performance, everything. Pretty self-explanatory. Gold was like, oh, you might need to add a command into like the Steam launcher options or, something like that. Very, very minimal. And now we're getting into the point where it's like, oh, you have to use a custom version of Proton. Oh, you have to use all these command options on top of the custom version of Proton. Oh, yeah. You have to use Wine Tricks. Oh, you have to use Proton Tricks. graphics on top of all the other stuff, but it's still rated gold. I'm like, no, because that's not what most end users are going to do. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to highlight some games that were 5 amazing games, but 0 hassle to play. It was literally 4 clicks. 2 of them were to enable Proton, and 2 of them were click the big blue install button and click the big green play button.
Oh,
that's
wow.
it. So the link for that particular video will be down in the show notes. And again, the mentality is because we sell Linux gaming as a great thing, and it is. Don't get me wrong. But on the same note, let's be real about what people are going to be willing to do. And I love people who are being technically sound and minded to try to solve some of these problems and maybe get them rolled into Proton and that kind of stuff. That's not what I'm criticizing. I'm criticizing our view on what the ranking system is, because that is where a lot of the problem I see is, oh, this is rated gold. Well, kind of. This is more like a rated bronze. A game that comes to mind for a long time was there was a couple of different Final Fantasy games that were just like you had to use Glorious Egg Roll, you had to use certain launch options, and you had to install certain libraries within Proton tricks, and it was just like, but it was sitting at rated gold, and I'm like, that's not quite.
No, it shouldn't be rated gold if you have to do all that work to make it work.
That is not minimal configuration. And I think the intent started out for ProtonDB to be that, because that to me is more like a silver, a low silver, high bronze, because it works, but there's a lot of stuff going into it to make it work that most end users aren't going to do. The platinum and gold rating should be specifically for people who want to just click the big green play button, basically. That was what this video I wanted to highlight. And because there are a ton of games that do just that. And we'll be doing more of those videos. So you guys can catch Linux for Everyone occasionally doing video game recommendations. So that's really been my big project for the week.
Awesome. I look forward to seeing that and more of what you and Jason come up with.
Oh, do we have things in the works? We got some big things, we got some small things, and we got some surprises along the way. This episode of DLN Xtend is sponsored by DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean offers the simplest, most developer-friendly cloud platform. It's optimized to make managing and scaling apps easy with an intuitive API, multiple storage options, integrated firewalls, load balancers, and more. DigitalOcean recently announced new features and services such as a virtual private cloud in all regions, free of charge. This lets you create multiple private networks to isolate your workloads. Container Registries is now available to all users. Easily store and manage private container images and push images seamlessly to DigitalOcean's Kubernetes. You can get all of this plus access to their world-class customer support for as low as $5 per month. Get started on DigitalOcean for free with a $100 credit by going to do.co/DLN, and you can use that $100 credit for spinning up over a dozen droplets or even some monster-sized droplets for 2 months. Again, you can get started on DigitalOcean with a $100 credit by going to do.co/DLN. So speaking of gaming and doing content with people like the amazing Jason Evangelo, who also is part of the Destination Linux Network, Wendy and I decided to take some time and talk about some gaming. Now, this is going to be more modern-ish gaming, so for those that are looking for Nate's retro take, with Nate not being here, sorry, that's just not going to happen this week.
All the fun pixelated stuff that we used to get from Zeb, or his hatred of it between Zeb and Ryan, we now get to hear Nate's joy over it.
Yes, this is the exact opposite.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of 16-bit games I really need to send him then.
Well, and I don't mind pixelated games, so I would have flashback. So much fun. As Zeb would be like, really? You gave me another one of these horrid pixelated games to review? And for the most part, like, I do love games that have beautiful graphics, but I'm not opposed to the pixelated game.
Yeah, like the whole thing with like game art, game game design, it really depends on how it's used.
Yeah.
And that's really, like, as an example, one of my favorite games on any platform, doesn't matter if it's console or PC, and I mean Mac, Linux, Windows across the board gaming. One of my favorite games is one called Dex, but it's like it's a 16-bit sprite-based cyberpunk open world. Like there's so many things that just you say these things and it makes no sense. But the art design is 16-bit. But what changes the dynamic is the kind of painted on living background on the 2.5D plane that you're on. So it's an artistic style choice that works really well because the cutscenes are done like comic book style. So it flows in and out really well. For a game that is probably maybe 10 to 15 hours, I've probably played that game like 5 times over. And it is literally probably the best dollar when it goes on sale that you will ever spend. And that's
you like it that much. So it's the story that you just, and you like the story-based games anyway.
It's the story, it's the art design. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a big Cyberpunk fan. So for me, it's got this realness to the world, and there's a dirty grunginess that like Cyberpunk emits as a genre, and it nails it really well. The thing that really establishes the atmosphere even more is the music. So those two things, when you nail the atmosphere, the voice acting is, barring one character, is actually really good, and the music is really good. It allows me to get invested enough to look past some of the flaws. And I know they're flaws, like the combat's a little weak, the gunplay's a little wonky, and I'm not gonna lie, the ending's kind of meh as far as like the actual end of the game. But it seems like lately most games that are developed kind of can't nail endings. I think for me that's where I like about that particular game. But like you, I also like really, really pretty games. So like I like playing games like Shadow of the Tomb Raider. It's really pretty.
Yeah.
Also helps it's a good game too.
Valley is one of the ones that I like to play that's got some of those really beautiful graphics and the way the world's designed. It just all kind of flows together and really nice looking.
Yeah, Valley is a cool game because most of these games we're talking about are Linux native. These two we've talked about thus far. Valley is really cool because it's got like that steampunk vibe, like set in was it World War II? I think this is where the story kind of kicks off.
Your World War II-ish, World War I-ish. I can't remember. I know it gives dates. It's been so long since I've been able to just sit down and play a game. So it was one of the games that I was playing last time I sat down to play. And as you got this kind of old world feel to it at the same time as you're in your modern time using old but very cool technology in your exploration. It's fun. It's more relaxing than some of the other games you can play. That's one thing that I've kind of liked about some of the more open world style is you don't have to follow a track. You have to figure out what you're doing and where you're going, which sometimes can be extremely frustrating. You've been back and forth through the same place 5 times. I know I need to be getting out of here and it's got to be around here somewhere to get out of here. I just can't figure out how to get out of here. Yeah, I really like that look of it's old technology, but still extremely cool technology. And all of this nature with it kind of flows together as you're exploring the world and stuff. I know I end up getting to a point I love this open world type atmosphere that Valley kind of has where you have to look and explore and do those kind of things. And for the most part, it's really relaxing, especially with that you're in the woods and the mountains kind of feel, which is one of my favorite places to be in real life anyway.
It doesn't hold your hand on trying to tell you where to go. It wants you to explore. A pro and a con for some people.
You get a basic direction, right? You know in what direction your objectives are. But other than that, you got to figure out how to get there.
Yeah. There's no giant waypoint like most marker where go here sign basically planted in it. It's right. Here's the general direction. Go that way. But the cool thing with that entire game is I love the aesthetic. Like the nature aesthetic is really cool. But one of the things that I really like about that game is the way that they handle the cycle of life with it. Because one of the gameplay mechanics is you absorb life from, say, a tree to grow another tree, or a life from an animal to grow a tree, or to resurrect an animal, or that is a really
you come
cool.
back from the dead, right?
Yeah.
That's how you can continue playing.
Yeah, it's a really cool concept. Like you said, the aesthetic is really, really nice. And it's that nature vibe is really relaxing. It does kind of get shattered a little bit once you start getting into the cave.
Yeah.
But that's more of a tension builder, and it's intentionally done. But man, that game is really, really beautiful. I'm not gonna lie. Very artistic, I guess is the right word.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, let's talk about your kids, Wendy, because they game on Linux. So doesn't your husband?
They do.
What are some of your games your husband likes to play, as an example?
One of the ones he actually plays the most is Farming Simulator 19. And it was one of those that it's made for Windows only. So it plays through Proton. And we got super lucky in the fact we bought it when it was released. And it's been one of those that's played pretty dang good on Proton from day one. And I mean, he spends quite a bit of time playing that. I think it's about the only way that you can make really good money as a farmer is to do it in virtual reality. He's done some of the different shoot 'em up games. He likes some of those war games, especially that center around World War One, World War Two, those kind of things. He really enjoys those and will play a little bit of those. And some of the trucking, right? I got him started on the trucking too, which I hate watching him truck. It is extremely frustrating because he can drive a truck in real life. So then he can take those exact same skills and backing up as he does in real life. He's like, oh, well, you turn it just a little bit that way and whatever. And like, he's got it done, no problem. And when I'm playing and he's looking, he's like, well, just go this way. And I said, I tried going that way and I still can't get the stupid thing where it's supposed to go. Which then, of course, he wants to back up the trailer for me because he can do it super quick, no problem, real life or in the game. And then I just, turn on the developer mode and fly.
Do you pull a Zeb?
I absolutely do. So I don't have all the caravans on there. And for anybody in the US, that means campers. One of those, it's both English, but different terms for the same item. So I don't do too much crushing to that. But yes, I do turn off the speed limits. So I'm not getting in trouble there. I have the mod set for no damage. And then I turn off sleep. Typically on the Euro truck version, I have 50,000 liter gas tank. So I almost never have to stop for gas. Every once in a while I do. And then it costs an absolute ton of money in order to fill up that tank. But I don't really ever have to stop. I can go as fast as I want. And it's one of those for me is I don't do it in truck driving simulator fashion. I take all of my built up road rage from and I live in small town, like my big town really isn't that big compared to a lot of people, but I still don't enjoy that, dealing with people in those situations. So I take all that built up road rage and I take it out in truck driving simulator and I pass in the emergency lane and I run cars over and run red lights. And it's just a wonderful way for me to be like, oh, I can't do this in real life, but I can dang sure make sure that I get where I want to go and not have to worry about the farm equipment that's taking up both lanes on the back road when I'm already running 20 minutes late.
What about your kids? I mean, I am curious to see how different people game with Linux, specifically because like you are a full blown Linux household. So you have
there is no Windows system at all in this house, which unfortunately might be changing just a little bit. For the most part, that's all the gaming that my kids know is on a Linux system. And for the most part, every single game that they wanted to play has played just fine. We've run into some issues where it's come to the Sonic games. And there's certain Sonic games like you were bringing up earlier where they are listed as gold, but there's all this other stuff you're supposed to do in the back end. And there's been some of them that even following the instructions on how to get them to work, I haven't been able to get them to work. So there's some frustration on that side in getting those to work. And that's one of the reasons why we ended up getting the Xbox One is now there's some of the games that my daughter was wanting to play on the computer, having issues getting to work. They're available for the Xbox One and she can play them there. We're slowly building up that library. I actually got most of the Sonic games we have, pretty much all of them, through Humble Bundle. So December last year, there was a Sonic game Humble Bundle. And if you haven't checked out Humble Bundle, it's one of my favorite places to buy games because you can get them not only at a great deal, but support some charities of your choice at the same time you're doing it. And that was like this. It was perfect. It was one of the perfect Christmas gifts I could possibly give my daughter, was this massive group of Sonic games. So that's where we got most of them. So I don't feel as bad about some of them that I've purchased not working because of where I bought them through. They play, I can't remember what it's called. I know we've talked about it before, but the robot fighting one, that's one of their favorite games to play. Overdrive.
Yep. Overdrive.
They love that one. And then there was some indie games on sale this summer. And so I got some of them for like super cheap. And there's one where you're a fish and you have to eat things and grow bigger and not get eaten. Really not that complicated of a game. The graphics are all hand drawn. They're nothing spectacular, but the kids absolutely love that game. It's one of the games that if they've earned their game time, it's one of the ones that they love to play. And I think I got it for like $1.50.
So I'm going to be a little bit of an enabler here. Shock, surprise. Be more shocked than surprised if I wasn't. Fanatical.com and IndieGala.com. They do bundles as well, and usually for Linux games or Proton enabled.
Sweet.
So you can get 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 games sometimes for really cheap. So yeah, not that I'm being an enabler.
Not an enabler. You're absolutely an enabler. But one reason why we may not be a strict Linux household anymore is one of the courses my daughter wanted to take this year is Minecraft. So it takes some of the STEM, science, math, technology, engineering, and takes that course and it does it through Minecraft. And you have to have the Minecraft Education Edition for this class. I haven't sat down because we haven't got our license yet for that version of Minecraft. So they've been running it through Multi-MC. So that is an application that lets you run not only Minecraft, but different versions of Minecraft on your Linux system. It is an absolutely amazing application, and it's one of my favorite ones I've found for Minecraft because the kids can start different versions of it. They can be like, well, I want this mod, and you throw it in this version of Minecraft, and you have these different instances that you can just launch at any time. That part is absolutely fantastic. I think they have a Windows version, but you can get it in a lot of cases directly from the repo on your Linux distribution. Super awesome. I don't know if they have a version on there for the education edition of Minecraft, so I do need to check that. And if they don't, if I can't get it to install and work properly on Linux, I'm either going to have to install dual boot and have a Windows partition or set up a Windows virtual machine to run Minecraft. We'll kind of see how that goes, and I'll kind of keep you up to date as we move forward through that. But we may not be strictly Linux, not by choice. Well, almost not by choice. She chose to take this class, but not by my choice.
Yeah, not by your choice. Yeah, because that's probably specifically relying on a lot of the Microsoft stuff. I don't think... Yeah. Because I'm not sure if the Java version is still up to, like the Java launcher and stuff is still up to date. So that could totally be different than what, I have been so out of Minecraft loop. It's not been funny. For somebody who's... The only
reason why I know anything about Minecraft is because my kids like Minecraft.
Nothing wrong with that. But I mean, for someone like me who's so into gaming, I'm so out of that Minecraft loop. It's not even funny.
Well, it's definitely different. It's a very interesting community in and of its own right. And then because of the way, the launcher set up, and then there's different versions of Minecraft. So it takes its own setup. And
I will say this about the Minecraft community. There are some imaginative, creative people with what you can do in that game.
Well, and it is crazy to see some of the things that they come up with. So, the kids will play locally together, like from their tablets and stuff. And they'll all join somebody's world and they're all playing together and they're doing these build-offs and all kinds of crazy stuff. And it's one of the few times that all 4 of my children, for the most part, get along with each other. The youngest likes to go through and put a whole bunch of mobs, bad things that will kill you in somebody's house. Like he's a little vindictive that way or tear apart somebody's house. So you got to watch out for the youngest when he's playing in your world. But otherwise, the other three, that's one of the times where they get along the best, is when they're building these different things and the stuff that they create and that they come up with. And that way, that's one reason why I do really love that game and love that they like to play it, is it brings out that creativity.
And all that creativity can be done on Linux currently.
Yeah,
awesome.
Absolutely. We'll have to include a link for multi-MC, because like I said, it is so cool, and it makes setup, especially some of the different changes and stuff that you can do, really easy. Just, click install type stuff. They've done an amazing job with it. Open source project.
But no, like I always enjoy hearing how others game, because I've been in and out of the games media end of the industry for I'm going to really date myself, almost a decade now. So I have an interesting perspective on that side of the industry, and as a consumer of games. So I always find, just like me taking myself out of the equation, I want to see how other people game, like what they look for in video games. So for you, what is it, like you specifically? Obviously, I can't ask you to speak for your kids or your husband, but what is it you specifically look for when you want to play a game? What is it that draws you to a game to want to play?
For the most part, it seems to be the more laid back, calm type games. I do like a few of the puzzle style games. The rest of my life is so hectic between, stuff that I've got going on, work-wise, stuff that I've got going on with the kids and school and, all of that. When I sit down for just me time, I typically want a game that's kind of relaxing, where I can just unwind.
Video games you call it an escapism, but that's what all entertainment is. Really is an escapism in some way, shape, or form. Video games are just an interactive version of escapism. Like for me, it's weird, because as someone who's been in the industry and out of it, and in various iterations and stuff over the years, I've obviously found like what kind of games I prefer and like what I gravitate to, because I've tried so many different ones. People poke fun at the fact that I have almost like 1,000 games that are on PC, be it Windows, Mac, Linux, across the board. That's not counting like all the console stuff that I own.
Oh my
goodness.
Whole
PS4, Wii U, Switch, PS3, Vita, Dreamcast, Genesis. So I have games up the wazoo to play. The games I gravitate towards are the ones that are like almost like a good book to me. So it's Japanese role-playing games are ones that I really like, because they're unique. They're a unique storytelling mechanism, and they got more of a whimsical feel to them. They're not the typical like Skyrim high fantasy kind of, like they might be high fantasy designed, but the way they do high fantasy is not similar to what you would get in a typical like Skyrim or a Oblivion or like an Elder Scrolls kind of game, where it's very atypical. And that to me is really what I gravitate to, because I like a good in-depth story. But on the same note, I also like games like Life is Strange, which it's a very story focused but very little gameplay, and that to me is just one of those games that I like.
That's really cool. I wish I could get into some of the story games myself, but most of the time I'm just like, okay, I'm totally over it. Let's get back to the game. Though my daughter really talks about the cutscenes, and she enjoys them on the games she plays. So I think she's more like you in that she enjoys the story that goes along with the game, that whole interactive aspect of it.
That's the thing I love about like video games as a medium. It's so wide and varied, so different from most movies and music, like other forms of that kind of stuff. Is really like genre based. It's really, you don't find many stuff that really like cross pollinates genres and stuff here and there, but overall it's pretty formulaic as far as how it comes across. This fits nicely into this little genre. This fits nicely into this little genre. This fits not. You get into gaming, it's not quite as clear and concise sometimes. And that's the thing I love about it. Like I was talking about decks. Most people would look at it and go, "Oh, it's a like what they would call a Metroidvania game." So it's like a 2D 2.5D like platformer. That's one aspect of the game, but it's also hub world, it's open world, it's an action RPG. But it's a cyberpunk game too. That's one of those games that kind of defies a genre. And you find that kind of creativity in the gaming industry and the games medium as a whole, but I really love. And the fact that things like Proton exist now, and I was a Linux gamer before Proton, so native games from like 2012 and that kind of stuff, awesome, great, I love them, still play them. Crusader Kings 2 is one of my favorite games. Time sink to no end. But on the same note, I love the fact that Proton can now help expand that reach of games that are accessible to not just Linux gamers, but everybody. And that's really the cool thing about it. And I appreciate the work that Codeweavers and Valve have put into Proton to make it work, and what the community has contributed to make it work. Things like Glorious Eggroll and all the other stuff. While I might poo-poo on some of the ratings on Proton DB, it doesn't diminish the work. And that for me is key. And I love being able to play a lot of these games that I probably 2 years ago would not have been able to play at all on Linux.
Yeah, absolutely. It really opens up the world and games that you have access to. And even though ratings now are a little wonky, it's still one of the first places I check for, there's this game that looks good. I see it's a Windows only. Well, I'm going to go check to see what the rating is and read through some of the play reviews before purchasing it.
Yeah, definitely. So like sometimes what I do is like I'll see a gold rating. I'll actually read a lot of the reports to see if it's actually gold now. Before I'd be like, I could just kind of quick glance it. Now I can't really do that, which is okay. I think it is a great tool to have. One of the best tools that I love from ProtonDB, though, that I love is linking your Steam account. They have the ability where you can actually link your Steam account, and then you can actually organize your entire library by rating. And that is amazing when you are someone like me who has like 700 games on my Steam account.
And I usually anymore, I mean, we've got quite a few, and mainly because I bought them through like Humble Bundle and that kind of thing, so you get a lot of games at once. One of my favorite features is games that are ready to play. So you're only seeing games that are downloaded and ready to go instead of sorting through all of the stuff that you don't have downloaded yet.
There are some amazing features that I love with ProtonDB and the stuff that you can do with it. Like the organization by rating. I was like, I've never played that game. Might as well try it.
Absolutely.
Well, when you have... Let's be real, when you have 700 flavors of ice cream to choose from, you're probably not going to try them all.
I know that there's a ton of games that we have that I haven't played yet at all. And there's some that I've played just a little bit. I need more time to game. Dang it, I just need more time to play.
So while this might come across as kind of like a mixed view on like, we're more talking gaming as a overall, not just specifically Linux, but also Linux and some of the stuff that we'd like to see fixed and the community that we use as resources, but also some of the things that we do love. ProtonDB is a great tool. Honestly, if they can get some of the rating stuff fixed, I would love to see Valve incorporate via like add-on or something, the ProtonDB ratings when you're using a non-Windows system.
Yeah.
So like if you are on a Linux system and you go to a Windows only game, but it gives a rating within the Steam store page of what that is on ProtonDB.
That would be super awesome.
At a glance purchasing ability, like that to me would be really cool.
This episode of DLN Xtend is brought to you by Bitwarden, the easiest, safest way for individuals, teams, businesses, and organizations to store their passwords and other vital, sensitive information. It is not only open source, but has also had third-party auditing on the source code. This is why I've chosen Bitwarden for my password manager. It's easy to get started. Just go to bitwarden.com/DLN. The big question is, why do I need a password manager? And that's a good one. Why do you? Well, I'll tell you. Using password 123 on all your accounts is just not a good security practice. Also, having the same password for everything is a terrible idea. Remembering all the variations is nearly impossible unless you have some kind of a super memory. And a super memory is something I do not have. And storing passwords on sticky notes or in a spiral-bound notebook is not only inconvenient, it also is a bit lacking in security efficacy. Therefore, I have chosen Bitwarden. This is a password book that I can take with me anywhere. I can have it on different computers, different browsers. on my mobile. Not only is it a safe place for passwords, but also identity and financial account information as well. This feature got me out of a pretty serious jam recently when I had an issue with some safety controls on one of my accounts. I needed to use another card to pay for the rest of the service. Since I didn't take that card with me anywhere, I didn't have it on me, but I did store the information on Bitwarden. I remembered I did this, so I pulled up that account information, paid for the service, and ultimately prevented what could have been a serious life interruption. You can get started with Bitwarden by going to bitwarden.com/DLN. It's free to use, but if you want to level up and go for the premium features for only $10 a year, not only will you support a great open source project, but also you will unlock premium password security and management features. Bitwarden has saved my bacon numerous times. Now, you wouldn't be able to pry it out of my cold dead device. We'd like to thank Bitwarden for sponsoring this episode of DLN Xtend.
So you guys got a taste of the flavors of games that we like to play. But here's another thing. There's also games that have just come out that I have not mentioned that I have played. I like this game so much that I backed it twice on Kickstarter. This game is called Sense, a Cyberpunk ghost story. This is a 2.5D horror game set in a cyberpunk world. Very unique. And this is why I love gaming, because so many things would not be like this. It just came out. I believe it's $20 on Steam. Well worth the price. I'm totally excited for it. Character art might be a little risque. The topics are a little risque, so it's definitely an M-rated title. I will say that. The nice thing with this is, and the thing that I liked about these guys, this developer specifically, the reason I backed this game was because they originally announced it as a Vita title. I'm a PS Vita owner. What they did is they held back the game editor, which was Unity, to the very last version that Unity supported the Vita. But also, I had talked to this developer about a year ago, and I kind of poked at, a Linux build, just joking around, because I'm like, yeah, there's no way. Lo and behold, I look at their Steam listing 2 days ago, and hey, look, there's a Linux build. So you can be sure, Skippy, that I poked them about testing that build.
Well, absolutely.
The link for this game will be down in the show notes. Again, not a game I would give the kids, but if you want an adult, like, horror story type game, this is a really cool game.
Very awesome. You are continuing your tradition of making sure everybody games.
Well, I have to enable everybody to game. Just saying. So what about you, though, Wendy?
Well, after we talked last week, you mentioned Light Zone. And Light Zone it's a photo editing tool that I had never heard of before. You mentioned that it used to be proprietary. It's been open source. And I got it downloaded, of course, like everything. It's in the AUR. So I've been playing with a little bit. I haven't dived into it too much, and we're going to be covering so much more on the photography software side next week. So if you're interested in that topic, make sure you tune in next week. But overall, first impressions are like, I'm so used to the way Darktable and Lighttable works that it was kind of a way I needed to take a step back. As you're switching through some of the different modules, it'll automatically turn some things on, and then you have to go, wait a minute, I didn't actually make that change. What's going on? And have to go through and turn different modules off that were automatically turned on when you switched to a different tab. So that part's been a little interesting to figure out. And where they have stuff laid out, there is kind of an overall older feel to it. The general UI style has got a lot more of the sharper edges and that inside the buttons and the layout. So when you just open it up, you might think this is something that hasn't gotten any attention for quite a while. But as you said, it just recently had an update. So it's still being worked on, just maybe not as actively as Raw Table and Dark Therapy. Oh my goodness, I did it again. I totally did it again and swapped it around. Darktable and Raw Therapy. There we go. See, I still want the combination of the two. I do it without even meaning to. I put them together.
That is fantastic.
But in just going over the basics of it, somebody who wants a lighter photo editor, they're just getting started. They don't want to do or deal with, try to learn at first all of the things that Darktable especially can do. I'll play with it some more, but it might be one of those great intro to editing images on Linux. Definitely has a really good range of tools to use for somebody who wants to do, just some quick editing and kind of play with some stuff. So I'll take a look at it a little bit more this week, and then we'll really dive into it next week.
Yeah, because for those that are wondering, next episode we're going to be talking Linux photography, specifically software. Wendy covers that, all the hardware stuff on Hardware Addicts, which you should all be listening to if you want to get into Linux photography. We'd like to continue this discussion with you on Telegram and Discourse, Mumble, or Discord. You can visit the DLN website for more information on how to connect to the social channels and also on shows and creators by going to destinationlinux.network. You can find Nate at cubiclenate.com. Links to his written blatherings and podcasts and his YouTube channel. You can follow my random ramblings on Twitter at MattDLN.
You can check out what I'm doing on Instagram at Linux and Lyft.
And as always, we thank you for joining us, and we'll be back next week for another episode of DLN Xtend. And until then, have a great week, everyone.